David Carr was talking Derek Carr on the NFL Network's draft kickoff last night. So David took time away from his busy schedule reviewing Rolls-Royce Spectres.
I think I want to feel it. I should know the rest of that song.
Sigma.
To offer a little bit of insight on what's going on with the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr. So this just kind of slipped through the timeline. This just kind of slipped through the cracks last night during draft coverage. And I can't really believe it. Like, I cannot believe the conversation that's happening with the Carr bros and the Saints. So let's listen to what David had to say, and I'm going to give my thoughts on this.
They nailed it. I mean, that's unfortunately the world that we live in. You got to have answers. And it's a business. I get the NFL is a business, and the Saints need to know if he's going to be available. And I promise you, there's no one that would want to know that more than Derek. And so that's what he's working through. And the Saints have been aware of this shoulder injury since the moment that it happened. Derek really believes that it happened in the game where he broke his wrist. And after the adrenaline wears off, you don't really throw. He didn't throw a ball really at game level tempo after that because he was trying to get back from that injury. So by the time they were able to go throw the ball again, it was still there. The shoulder was still bothering.
Like, what is going on? Okay. Like, the timeline keeps changing. The goalposts keep moving. I said from day one, when the news broke that Derek could be having surgery and he might not play and all this other stuff, that, you know, I talked about crisis communication, and I talked about why I thought the way they were handling it put them in a lose-lose situation where no matter what the answer was, it wasn't going to look good. It wasn't a good look for Derek. And that's how this has played out. Let's really look at what's happened. Okay, first, we get that Carr wants to be traded. Okay, we also simultaneously get that he is willing to restructure and do whatever it is for the team. He said that in his interview. Then we get the news that he is pissed about the restructure, wants to trade. Saints don't trade him, they restructure him, whatever. Then we hear all of a sudden, hey, I might have to have surgery 10 days before the draft, which seems like everyone in the know is saying it was leaked by Carr's own camp. All right. So the Saints are in a horrific position at that point where they're sitting there 10 days before the draft. And now Derek Carr is like, yeah, I might have to have surgery, y'all. Now we're sitting here with David. Oh, and at that time, we were told that this injury happened while he was with the Raiders and in Green Bay. Now we're hearing that he's trying to work with the Saints, trying to be back ready to roll, and that the injury happened against the Giants, which is the first time we've heard that. So talk about goalposts moving. Even the injury timeline is moving all over the place. All right. Now I'm going to let David finish here.
So then you start to go through, okay, what do we have to do to get it right? Because it doesn't really matter if you're on the field in April. It matters that you can be there for week one. And as a veteran player, that's what you're trying to do.
Okay. Well, then why didn't you have it whenever it was the season was over? You're telling me, okay, because now we are supposed to believe Derek gets hurt, gets MRIs, gets scans, get whatever. If you remember correctly, ladies and gentlemen, he was trying to play. There was rumor that he might play the last couple of weeks of the season last year. You would think at some point, because they talked about shooting up the hand. Remember the interviews? Derek in his last interview talked about that they were going to shoot up the hand, but if they shot up the hand, he wouldn't be able to grip the ball or grip the snap or whatever. So you would think at some point in that process, he's moving his arm to where he would know if he has a torn labrum or if he's got some shoulder issues. Okay? This, out of all of the situations, this one is probably the most unrealistic, I think. The most unrealistic is that he was all good. He was totally fine. Then he injures it against the Giants, the last game he played. And because he hasn't actually tried to throw, he didn't know his shoulder was injured, which seems weird because he also was trying to, we also had news that he was petitioning to try and get traded. All right, so none of that makes sense. None of it. continue.
And you understand also at the same time, there's a draft, and you have to kind of know what's happening. So trust me, he's working with the Saints. He's working with Mickey. They're trying to figure out the best way forward. Surgery is a possibility. Not surgery is a possibility. And just trying to – that's what Derek would prefer. Let me just rehab this thing. Let me get out there and make it go. But you don't know yet. And he's trying to find the answers.
I mean, this guy sounds like a fool. I mean, honestly, this is some – he's talking like George Orwell. This is some double speak. I mean, this is double speak. He's saying 15 different things and none of them make sense. He could have surgery. He might not have surgery. He wants to rehab it. He's working with the Saints. He got hurt in the Giants game. Okay, if he got hurt in the Giants game, why? Like David said, it's not about being ready in April. It's about being ready week 1. Okay, well then why isn't he doing anything? Why hasn't surgery happened? Why don't we know the extent of the injury? We don't even know the actual injury. We don't know when the injury happened. Could be season ending. Could get traded to a team. Could start for the Saints. Could start for somewhere else. If I'm the Saints, you at some point have to cut through the noise. You have to have a meeting with your captains, the Alvin Kamaras of the world, the Cam Jordans of the world, the DeMario Davises of the world, whoever. That's why they're your captains. And you got to sit down and you have to have a conversation of what do y'all think? What do y'all think we should do? What is the locker room? What's going on in the locker room? If they say, oh man, we just want Derek back. We want Derek healthy, whatever, different story. But if they come back and they're like, look, man, this is, we don't need this. Like, we don't need this. This is weird. This is toxic. This has become a really bad distraction. I think regardless of what David is saying here, I think if you're the Saints, you probably have to move off of him. The time is up. I've heard way too much about this. And what's going to piss me off is if the Saints draft, which they drafted Kelvin Banks, if they draft a wide receiver and a defensive end in the second round, and they draft a cornerback in the third round, and they draft a whatever, and all of a sudden they don't draft a quarterback, or, and all of a sudden Derek's like, you know what? Turns out I went to a physical therapist. I'm good to go. That would piss me off bad, because there's not a doubt in my mind. He's sitting back watching what the Saints do, watching if there will be a young quarterback, watching if they get linemen, watching if they get weapons, watching how it all plays out, and then we're going to get some clarity on what's going on. And, oh, man, I ain't happy about that. This has gotten to the point to where I'm done with the Derek Carr era. And I think the Saints should really look at what that means. If they can, obviously, if you can trade them and get something back and you work something out, whatever, that's obviously the best case scenario. But depending on how that conversation with Cam and Alvin and DeMario and all that would go, I think you just cut bait. This just feels gross. It feels icky. It's only been a couple weeks. Like, this all happened a week and a half before the draft. So this hasn't even been 3 weeks. And we've heard a million different stories. Even just the fact that we're hearing it from David pisses me off. Like, just the fact that, like, I heard somebody or I read something in the comments where it's like, why isn't Derek in the building? If we're trying to figure out what the injury is, if we're trying to figure out the extent of the injury, the rehab situation, is surgery an option, when the hell it happened, why isn't he here? Why isn't he with team doctors? Why isn't he in the team facility? Where is he? He's at some California urgent care trying to figure out what the rehab situation is? Like, wouldn't the team want their doctors to kind of have a look at this? Like, even that, it's like, I don't know. I mean, when he gets hurt against the Giants, the whole thing at the end of the season was the fractured hand, the concussion, all that stuff. At no point were we like, yeah, well, Derek might play against the Bucs, if we can shoot up the hand, if he can grip a ball, whatever. Oh, by the way, he's got a torn labrum. And then, I mean, even the most diehard, how I feel bad for, honestly, is the Carr faithful. Because so many Carr faithful have been telling me he was hurt against the Raiders. This injury happened against the Raiders. Then I've heard people say it happened against the Packers. And now it is against the Giants. They can't all be true. All of it can't be right. All right? And the Packers and the Raiders thing, that kind of didn't make sense because we didn't hear anything about this the first 2 weeks of the season. We didn't hear about this. Derek Carr he's played in the NFL for a decade. I'm sure he's got some shoulder issues. But the fact that he's dangling a season-ending surgery, or was dangling, now I guess he's not. Now I guess he's dangling like, yeah, man, we'll just rehab it. I'm just, when I saw this come through, I couldn't believe it. And like, the guts and the hubris and the ego on these guys, the Carrs, is absolutely shocking. I mean, the Rolls Royce video is one thing, but, and you know, I wasn't watching the NFL Network broadcast, so I don't know what my boy Chris Rose, what the question was that he fed to David here, but, you know, it's just time. I think it's time. And the thing that would surprise me the most is if Derek Carr was the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints in week 1 of the NFL, or if he came back at all. And again, like, imagine you are the Saints, okay? Imagine you're the Saints. Imagine you're Mickey Loomis and Kellen Moore, and you go into this draft thinking, well, damn, Derek might have season-ending injury. We haven't seen Derek. He hasn't been anywhere around here. Like, we don't know what's going on. And now you take Kelvin Banks, and then you see this, and you're like, what? So is he here? Is he playing or not? You know, like, what? I mean, again, all this does is throw a curveball to the Saints. Because now the Saints are probably thinking, well, damn, do we take Tyler Shuck? Do we take Jalen Milroe? Do we take... All of a sudden, we're going to have 6 quarterbacks on the roster if Derek rolls back. If Derek rolls back in here, you got Derek Carr, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, the drafted quarterback. Like, what's going on? Right? So it just continues to put Derek and the Carr bros ahead of the team. I'm over it. I think the team is over it. The team feels like a lingering shadow where everything I hear from Kellen Moore is so innovative, so fresh. You know, the draft is going great. Kelvin Banks, love the idea, love the identity. Everything seems to be moving forward. 9 draft picks, 8 remaining. But you have this, like, $100 million shadow, and the shadow has one shoulder, lingering over this team. And I don't think we'll be able to go into that next era without getting this solved, one way or the other. And I think it's got to come down to a trade. It's got to come down to, or just release them. One of the other. You know, like if Pittsburgh passed up on Shedeur Sanders. If Pittsburgh's willing to make a trade for Carr, late round draft pick, eat some cat, whatever they end up doing, however they work it out, fine. At this point, fine. But they got to make a move. Someone's got to do something. I'm sick of these updates. If you really want to work with the team and you really want to figure this stuff out, get them to the team doctors and let's have an actual, let's actually talk about it. Let's actually get it out there. But the secrecy and then these little nuggets coming out, doing nothing for me. But let me know in the comments below what you think, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think is the latest in the Derek Carr saga? I know it's whiplash all over the place, but what do you think about this? Let me know. I will see you in the next video.